Yo, what's up YouTube? James Baek here, and today we're doing a little bit something different. So if you don't know, Series 6 just got announced for the Battle Stadium ladder, and we have an interesting rule set this time. It's going to be a rule set that has a ban list this time. So the top 10 of singles as well as doubles Battle Stadium ladder, the top 10 Pokemon from each of the ladders has been accounted for and put together into a single ban list for both singles and doubles of the next season. So I don't know if this is going to be guaranteed because we have no idea if this is actually going to be the next VGC series, because sometimes we've had some differences between the double stadium ladder and the actual VGC. Of course, if you don't know, the most recent example of it was, like, remember Gigantamax Charizard with solar power was allowed in VGC for quite a bit before, until on the stadium ladder, before it was officially announced or released in VGC to be legal. That happened, as well as, like, in previous years, in previous games actually, we had instances where the online ladder actually didn't match the VGC rules. So we have no idea if this is actually going to be the VGC rules, but I've gotten a lot of questions about this. So if this is going to be the VGC rules, I might as well go over them. And it's still interesting because it does affect our main content, because the doubles ladder is the only way to practice doubles currently with the format in the actual game, unless you want to go on like Pokemon Showdown to play. So I'll go over the top 16 Pokemon, the 16 Pokemon that were banned from Series 6 that we're not allowed to use in the next season of Battle Stadium, which is the month of September. And yeah, I'll give my thoughts about these mons being banned, what it means for the game, what Pokemon can potentially rise up as well after these Pokemon do get banned, obviously. So yeah, let's just get started and go with the analysis. So the first Pokemon that was actually in singles and doubles was Cinderace. It was in the top 10 of both, and yeah, obviously Cinderace was a very common Pokemon in VGC 2020. Really important because of its libero, allowing to change types, allowing to get stab max moves, especially with like combination of like max airstream. We had max strike with Giga Impact, strong fire move, really high base speed. It was really high. It's like 118 or 119. It is a super strong Pokemon that really fit a bunch of hyper offensive teams and was really obnoxious to handle if you didn't have the right counters, because this Pokemon could just constantly change typing, had a lot of different ways to increase stat boost with like max knuckle, as well as like steel spike, and of course airstream, of course, and just hit really hard with the life orb, especially with the stat factor from libero. So it was a Pokemon that really fit a lot of hyper offensive teams and could really make you play some guessing games right on, and definitely was a Pokemon that just liked to do Dynamax immediately, and it just did so much damage. Again, the stab Dynamax moves really just absolutely insane, including that speed factor from airstream was really crucial. So yeah, Cinderace was a popular pick ever since its hidden ability was ever, you know, released back in Series 4, well, like mid-Series 4 to Series 5. Cinderace has always been a big staple and has been one of the top Pokemon recently. So yeah, it's interesting to see the lack of hyper offensive pressure without Cinderace, because Cinderace was a very big part of hyper offensive teams. Next, we got Dragapo, another singles and doubles top 10 Pokemon. And Dragapo was a very interesting Pokemon because it had a lot of versatility, especially with its move kit and its high base speed of 143. Basically one of the fastest Pokemon in the game. Really good Dynamax user. Clear Body was an amazing ability, preventing any stat drops from like Intimidate. Could hit really hard. Had good move pool for both special and physical. Had max airstream. Really good access. Immune to Fake Out, of course. And yeah, it's just really strong. It had support options as well. It has Dragonance for setup. It was a Pokemon that just really did a lot, and just it could shut down so many teams because it's a really good balance mon, because high speed, pretty good attack, pretty good special attack, not the best bulk in the world, but Dynamax can help with that. And with a life orb, especially since you can't shut this Pokemon down stat wise because of Clear Body, it just was able to do so much work. Like sometimes you would even see weakness policy to boost it up. You would see support with like Focus Sash on be like beat up teams, Surf with Colossal, Screen sometimes. It had a lot of versatility. So without Dragapult, there are a lot of teams that actually get a lot worse, because they did rely on Dragapult as a breaker on some teams, especially some of the balanced teams, as well as a good support Pokemon for like teams like that relied on, you know, the Surf immunity as well as the high speed, like Colossal teams, and again like beat up on the justified users. So yeah, interesting to see how the meta will shift for Dragapult. Next, we got Excadrill, and Excadrill, of course, had two options. It was either a Sandrush user or a Mold Breaker user. It kind of fell a little bit from Series 5, but kind of started rising back in the later parts of Series 5, especially in the Players' Cup. It actually did extremely well in general. And yeah, Excadrill, of course, being a huge threat. Great Steel type and Ground type, allowing for amazing max moves coverage. Got options with Sword Stance setup. Decent coverage, hits really hard, and pretty much one of the best users of its typing combination, because there aren't that many good ground types and not that many good steel types, and Excadrill really just fit that role where it could put on a lot of pressure. And again, those max moves boosting the defense was pretty incredible. It could go Life Orb, it could go Focus Sash, it could go Weakness Policy, it could go a lot of different items, and even Lumberry was used, and it just was able to do well as a great offensive sweeper potentially. Or it could like set up its max moves and boost, like for instance, a bulky weakness policy set that we saw Eduardo Cunha use quite often in the past series. So yeah, no, Excadrill is going to be interesting, especially since there is no Tyranitar, which we will get into later. Gyarados is an interesting one. This one actually got banned off singles, and doubles, it actually does play an important part. It was the only water type that really gets intimidated unless you count Quillfish, but no one really used that. It is a Pokemon that, you know, it's not the most common Pokemon, but it's definitely not the least used. It's definitely got some usage. It does have access to like Airstream, Overgrow, Water, the Max Geyser. It has pretty good coverage actually with like Earthquake. It could run a multitude of items like Lumberry, Life Orb, Assault Vest are probably the most common items that Gyarados could have. Could go Intimidate, could go like a Moxie Sweeper potentially. And it was really solid as just like a sweeper potentially, or it could even go support. It did have options in this kit for support. No Gyarados. I don't think it's like the end of the world because there are a bunch of good water types in the format, but definitely an interesting pick that Gyarados is not allowed, because it does function well on certain teams. For instance, the team that I used to get rank 1, I think it was really important on the Venusaur team, because having a Pokemon that could deal with Incineroar, for instance, was really good for Venusaur. But of course, a lot of the Pokemon I am discussing is actually on the list, so I guess it doesn't really matter too much. But there are some teams that did appreciate Gyarados' typing on them for the Intimidate more than like an extra fire type. Hippowdon's an interesting one, and this one actually doesn't have much VGC relevance. This one's actually banned based off the singles user stats. And yeah, there wasn't much about Hippowdon. The only thing that really Hippowdon did is I've seen it a few times on ladder, and it's really interesting concept wise. It gets a lot of good moves: Yawn, Stockpile, Body Press. It gets Recovery and Slack Off. It's a pure ground type, which can be a benefit as well as a drawback, but overall it's a pretty bulky Pokemon. It could just spread Yawn. It can set up with Stockpile or use Excadrill, because it was partnered with Excadrill mainly because it could get like Steel Spike or Quake Boost, and you know, just sit there, eat up attacks, fire off Yawns to stall it out, maybe Body Press for quite a bit of damage with the Steel Spike boost. And yeah, it was a Pokemon that was really interesting. It wasn't really used that much though, so I don't think it's going to have much of an impact on VGC, but it was definitely a niche mon, and it is kind of sad to see it go, because it didn't really have a reason to get banned in VGC. So next we got Incineroar, and Incineroar is a Pokemon that I felt like overall was just like a nice addition overall, but it wasn't like a game changer decision when it came in through Series 3. I felt like Arcanine was already a pretty solid fire type, and Incineroar just filled certain niches on teams that like setup or just like the dark typing in general. And I feel like Incineroar is still, you know, it's still pretty good Pokemon, but I definitely think it's more niche than it was like back in previous years. Of course, it does have that Intimidate ability. Fire type, dark type is pretty good, which is a ghost immunity. It had Parting Shot access, which was really nice for this generation. Could pivot out, fake out pressure with the Intimidate, of course, just really good tools overall. Good coverage with the fire moves like Flare Blitz, and now the current Burning Jealousy, which was pretty common, as well as like dark type moves. Lash Out got pretty good for a Darkest Lariat, is still an option. Still slow pivot. It's a really good support Pokemon in general. I don't think it's like that bad that Incineroar is banned. I don't think it was like ever like really like a huge nuisance of Pokemon, especially in this generation. And we have Arcanine, so I don't think it's like too bad. But I guess because Tyranitar also got banned with it, dark types are a little bit scarce in this format, so I guess that could be a little bit problematic. So next we got both Inidies getting banned, and I was actually confused on why Inidee was actually so common that it was actually top 10, but then it kind of makes sense when they they put the usage stats for both male and female as the same, so actually like if you're using the male or the female, it counted towards the usage stats. So that probably is the reason why, even though they're quite a bit different in their roles. Male entity, imprison user mainly, or it could be offensive, mostly used for imprison trick room. Could set up trick room, but not usually. Or it could be like offensive with like choice specs or life orb, but generally was just an offensive psychic terrain user. It wasn't like super common, but it did help some hyper offensive teams with the psychic terrain, you know, to help protect like Pokemon like Lapras from like priority grassy glide, because changing terrain could be nice. And yeah, not really much to say about it. Female entity was probably a bit more common with the follow me support. It was one of those interesting ones that could set up a different terrain, prevent fake out at the same time. And the follow me, it was pretty bulky overall. Could set up like screens, helping hand, heal pulse support. Helped with the psychic terrain once again, because like it could matter, because female entity was probably most common paired up with like Pokemon like Hatterene, which allows size spam to be quite a bit of a strong nuke. But with entity gone, it looks like we're not going to see the psychic types too much anymore, because they don't really get as much usage out of them. Like Hatterene won't be like game powered up by the psychic terrain. So you probably will see a lot less expanding force now, as well as the Hatterene trick room, or like the Alakazam size spam stuff. You probably just won't see that anymore. Next we got Magnazone. It was banned in singles. It was actually picking up usage in doubles. It's a pretty interesting Pokemon. Electric Steel, pretty good typing overall, of course 4 times weak to ground, but overall has some pretty good options, especially because all 3 of its abilities are good. Analytic, Sturdy, and Magnet Pull are actually pretty solid. We saw Analytic probably be the most used in VGC because of the fact it could abuse, you know, powerful max moves with the Analytic boost, which is pretty insane. I think the most common sets in VGC were Weakness Policy Sturdy or the Analytic Grassy Seed. And I think those were the most common on Magnazone, because of the fact that you could get the Grassy Seed boost with Magnazone, since you would partner it up with Rillaboom, get the defense boost, and then like start going for steel spikes consistently to boost up your defense and get the body press, which I thought was probably one of the Magnazone's best set. Solvus was a little bit used, but not really too much. And yeah, the Weakness Policy set was kind of like an early fad thing, but then it just completely dropped off. I don't think it really changes too much. It kind of hurts the Rain teams, because Rain is probably going to get a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's like a huge game changer. There's still plenty of good steel types and pretty good electric types overall, so I don't think it's like a huge loss for the format. I don't think it really changes too much with it being gone. Mimikyu is interesting of getting banned. It was banned because it was high usage of singles, and of course with its disguise ability, pretty good in VGC. It could take 1 hit at least guaranteed, as well as, unless it was Mold Breaker X, which was Iron Head. And of course, like Mimikyu would be able to, for instance, get like Trick Room up. Sometimes it'd be able to get Sword Stance up. It was a pretty good Pokemon just because disguise ability, able to stall out most 1 turns. Again, other than Excadrill, or like maybe like the max move from Gmax Cinder Ace or Rillaboom, ignoring the disguise. But basically it was a pretty good Pokemon, had some options, could be bulky, even if it doesn't look as bulky by its stat wise. It's actually deceptively bulky. It can take attacks up, Trick Room, support with Willow's Taunt, it can Trick Room, of course, Swords Dance, Sweeper. It had a lot of good options. Lumberry was a common item, Life Orb was a pretty common item, Shadow Stick to activate the Weakness Policy. I don't think Mimikyu being gone really changed too much if we were talking about strictly Series 5, because Series 5 Mimikyu was super rare. Back in Series 3 and Series 4, Mimikyu was a lot more common, especially since Weakness Policy Dragapo was more of a thing. Like there was an archetype called Triple Ghost, had Dragapult often, had Mimikyu, and then like maybe Dusclops. And it really just relied on getting the Weakness Policy set up with Dragapult. But yeah, since that really died down, Mimikyu's role really just, I think, just fell over. And yeah, Mimikyu has been a Pokemon that's been dropping usage. It could have been nice for the format, this format, because like a lot of the threats, I think, basically that kind of hindered Mimikyu are gone. So Mimikyu could have succeeded more in this format, but I don't think like anything loses too much out of it for not being there. So yeah. Porygon 2, a Pokemon that got banned in the singles, not really as much common in VGC. It's a pretty interesting mod. You pretty much always see this Pokemon as a Trick Room setter in VGC with like Recover, because it does get that option for Recover. A nice healing with Recover, making allowing to stay on the field longer, potentially get more Recover, stall out max moves, etc. And overall, Porygon, pretty good Pokemon. The download, being able to get a special attack boost potentially, had pretty good coverage. Tri-Attack, Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, Shadow Ball was pretty much all you really need on Porygon for the offensive capabilities. And yeah, it was just a really bulky Pokemon. And only has one weakness, which is kind of crazy in fighting. And fighting wasn't even that common of a type. So Porygon was just able to sit there and sometimes and just like wall teams, because it was really hard to deal with Porygon sometimes. And yeah, I don't think it's like that bad that Porygon's gone. Of course, it could have been really good with the Pokemon that were gone, because like, for instance, Rillaboom, which is on this list, was probably one of the better ways to help handle Porygon on teams, because knockoffing the Violet was huge. But yeah, it could have been maybe a nuisance to deal with if Porygon was still in the format, but about it allows better wall breakers, I feel like, because Dusclops is definitely more manageable to handle than Porygon 2, I think. But overall, yeah, I don't think there's like too much other than like Porygon would be clicking ally switch potentially that we could see there. But yeah, I don't think it really changes too much that Porygon's gone. And you know, it could have made some teams better. It could have been hard to handle in the upcoming series, but I don't think there's like much that loses. There's not many teams that I think lose out on having Porygon 2 banned in the upcoming series. So next is a Rillaboom, and Rillaboom was a very common choice when the Grassy Surge Rillaboom was finally released again with Cinderace in Series 4, mid-Series 4. And this Pokemon has been constantly, I think, top 5 in the entire game, or usage-wise, the entire time, because of the fact that Grassy Surge is pretty good as a grass type. It's one of the few good grass types, I think, in this format, with the Grassy Surge helping some teams, especially in the Terrain Wars where there was NDD, for instance. And yeah, just being able to like do really good damage with its grass type moves. Its stats are pretty good, has really good everything, really, from bulk to offensive capabilities to even speed. It just had like pretty much everything it needed. Had a lot of options and utility in like Swords Dance, Choice Banded Rillaboom, standard Fake Out, support Rillaboom with like Assault Vest. It could just run a lot of different items, and it definitely was a great support Pokemon for a lot of teams. Again, Fake Out Pressure is really good. Pivoting with U-Turn, it had the ability to set up. It had the ability to do a lot of damage. G-Max Rillaboom was able to go insane. There was even Weakness Policy Rillaboom. There's just like so many different sets you can run. And the Rillaboom support with the Grassy Seed allowed, you know, some sets to shine, especially like Grassy Seed on Burden sets. Again, Grassy Seed on Pokemon like Magnazone could be really nice. And overall, Rillaboom was a pretty big factor, especially with Grassy Glide. The move was quite insane. A 70 base power move that has priority in the terrain while getting that power up, and coming from a really high attack time Rillaboom. Yeah, it could be insane sometimes. Rillaboom was like a really key factor to help shutting down like super bulky water types that basically you didn't really see water types because of Rillaboom. So now that Rillaboom's gone, water types are going to thrive again, especially with the ban on Venusaur too. All right, the next one, Togekiss. Now this one, probably one of the best Pokemon in VGC 2020 period. Like, it is one of the best. It has so many options, specifically the fact that it can go support, it can go bulky, it can go weakness policy, it can go offensive, it can just do so many things. It has a really good move pool. Its typing is also fantastic. A great fairy type. It's probably the best fairy type, I think, in the entire generation, because of the fact that we don't have much. Maybe you can make an argument for Primarina, but I think Togekiss by far was just like the better fairy type, defensively, especially because it has pretty good stats overall around the board. It's really hard, especially with the option, of course, the infamous Crit Kiss with the Super Lux Scope Lens, giving it a 50% chance to give it a chance to crit. Even max moves, which can be absolutely insane if it's able to get it off. Gets really good coverage, of course. Max Airstream, Max Starfall, and Max Flare are really incredible tools for it, and could just like deal with a lot of things. There weren't really many Pokemon that just switched into Togekiss effectively, especially if they got the crit, because it was just doing a ton of damage regardless. So really hard to handle Togekiss. It just fit on so many teams. It could provide a follow me role. It could provide a wall breaker role with the Scope Lens, because if they're trying to like play it defensively, like an Arcanine clicking Snarl a bunch, Togekiss can just like break through that with a 50% chance crit, and it could be like really hard to stop the Togekiss, especially since it's already bulky. It can go on offensive sweeper once again with the Airstream, weakness policy, Scope Lens. It just was a Pokemon that had so many options. It was versatile and could fit on so many teams. So not having Togekiss is going to be really interesting, because a lot of teams did rely on Togekiss as a follow me user, as well as just like an offensive user in general, as the one of the best fairy types again of the generation. So it's going to be really interesting, because Togekiss gone really affects a lot of teams in my opinion. Torkoal gone. So Torkoal did get eliminated, and Yeah, this Pokemon's quite insane. Of course, the sun mainly is huge. The fact that it had quite a few options for this little slow turtle. So yeah, it's not speed wise great. It has really good defense though. Its base physical defense is 140. It had pretty good offensive capabilities because of its ability drought, just being able to set up the sun. Eruption with like choice specs or charcoal just did a ton of damage. I had options for like good coverage in general. Eruption, heat wave, the fire type attacks, of course, solar beam, earth power. It had some pretty good coverage overall. It just hit a lot of things, and there wasn't really much switching into Torkoal effectively, as well as like the support Torkoal, which I think was the superior set and definitely something that just started picking up more recently. The body press yawn set, and I think it's a really good set in general, just because like Torkoal with its already high defense stat can just like utilize that body press for doing a ton of damage, and being able to yawn for switches I think is really nice on this Torkoal. We've even seen some burn jealousy Torkoal sets because, like, you know, Pokemon like Cinderace for instance want to airstream, want to max knuckle, boost up the stats, and Torkoal with a high physical defense can burn those Pokemon, and it could be really crucial at times. So yeah, this Torkoal going to be gone is interesting because it does affect a lot of the chlorophyll mons, and like Sun in general I think just like shut down a lot of common teams especially, and I'll talk about that more when we're analyzing the Pokemon. But Sun gone is pretty huge, especially since Torkoal was the best Sun user by far. Tyranitar is no longer allowed, and Tyranitar was an interesting one. I think it did a pretty good role in general. It definitely was like a top 5 for me early on in the beginning of the VGC 2020 meta, and I think it's still a really good Pokemon in general. Rock Dark, of course, being able to get the sand stream up, increasing special defense. Pretty bulky Pokemon, had really amazing stats in general. Speed was a bit lacking, but that's pretty much okay for the most part. Had access to the weakness policy, could run Focus Sash. There are a lot of different in Tyranitar sets. It was a very versatile Pokemon, really good coverage in general, although mostly you just saw like Dark move, Rock move, Superpower, and then like either Protect or something else. Actually gets good support moves, but support Tyranitar not really a big thing. Of course, Tyranitar I think was just very good on a lot of teams. Helped again the Sun matchup because it really did help with the chlorophyll, like dealing with chlorophyll mons by switching sand, preventing the chlorophyll mons to get the speed boost from the Sun. Was able to tank an attack from Venusaur, assuming it's on the Sun. Was one of the Pokemon that could actually handle Charizard, especially with Dynamax, which was absolutely crucial because this Pokemon just was able to handle a lot of Pokemon by itself. Like for instance, Porygon Z can't really touch Tyranitar, neither can Charizard. It was a Pokemon that was just really good overall, solid on balance, solid on a lot of things. Again, provided sand for Excadrill. Just a really top tier mon. Kind of helped against Dragapo quite a bit because like Dragapo doesn't do too much to Tyranitar unless it's like max steel spike. Max dragon still does a lot, but like Tyranitar's going to be able to eat it. It's getting an attack off, hoping it's not weakness policy, just does a lot. Overall, really solid Pokemon. Can sweep again with weakness policy because self earthquake from Excadrill was a thing. Bulldoze was pretty common on some teams with Tyranitar with like Trick Room mode. Overall, just a really solid Pokemon. It's interesting to see Tyranitar go down along with Sun, so it's going to be really interesting how this format's going to shape up. We got Venusaur, and this was a Pokemon. Oh boy, it was super frustrating to deal with. We have Venusaur with Sun already gone. Venusaur is also gone, which means no more Sleep Powder, which is absolutely huge because some teams just didn't like facing life for Venusaur. They would always run Sleep Powder and 3 attacks, and Venusaur was a Pokemon getting Earth Power in this generation. Very hard to switch into. Like very hard to switch into. It was very rare you could find a switch into. There's even Weather Ball too, but not many Venusaurs did actually run Weather Ball, although it was really good with the fire coverage because like Pokemon like Corviknight couldn't switch in. Venusaur was just super impressive. I think the Sleep Powder, again, the fast Sleep Powder was just like really hard for a lot of teams to handle. Could rely on luck basically, and yeah, it always came down to some mind games, especially with like Dynamax, Venusaur. Or do they go for the Sleep Powder, or do they just go for the Gigantamax, which they have now, and they would go for like, you know, the Vine Lash, and it would just like chip away your team. And if you call it wrong sometimes on like turn 1, it just like really just an instant loss. So it was really hard to deal with Venusaur overall. It had really good things, and I think it just like frees up a lot of Pokemon now that it's gone, and a lot more strategies can actually like, you know, don't have to worry about the Sun matchup because a lot of teams were weak to the Sun matchup and often had to gamble on maybe some Sleep Powders on some sleep rolls. But now that Venusaur's gone, probably a bit more freed up. And the last Pokemon we have is Whimsicott. So Whimsicott is a pretty important Pokemon on like hyper offensive teams. You really only saw this Pokemon on like hyper offensive teams, or maybe like, you know, some kind of like beat up shenanigan teams. But overall, prankster, very fast Tailwind user. Did have Trick Room, never really used it. Was very common for just like Tailwind, maybe Helping Hand or Fake Tears to help just like the partner do a lot of more damage. Often ran either Moonblast, Energy Ball, or Dazzling Gleam as the attacking move, and then had a variety of support moves: Encore, Taunt. Again, it gets Trick Room. Often ran Protect because Fake Out became quite a common thing, so Protect ended up becoming more of a staple. But overall, a lot of teams did really like the Tailwind on Whimsicott, and of course Helping Hand and Fake Tear support after, just to deal a massive amount of damage. So Whimsicott gone is going to hurt hyper offense. I don't think it really hurts too many other teams being gone, although it was one of the few Pokemon that did get Tailwind, which is pretty crucial. But overall, I don't think it's that bad, but it does really hurt beat up teams that Dragapo. Whimsicott's gone. Now Charizard's a lot easier to handle because there's no Tailwind, Sunny Day, and Fake Tears, Helping Hand combinations that Whimsicott can do. There's a lot of strategies that can like affect it because of these Pokemon, but I'm going to be talking about the strategies and Pokemon that could probably rise up with all these Pokemon gone. So it's going to be interesting to see how the format shapes up. Here are going to be my early takes. Again, these are all opinions and based off what I really think. So the first thing that comes to mind when I saw the ban list is what exactly gets changed, and I feel like the water types are freed. So basically, Rillaboom, super oppressive to like bulky water types. It's really hard because Rillaboom is basically really hurting the water types because of the fact, one, Priority Grassy Glide does a lot. Wood Hammer, Choice Band could do a lot, and it was really hard to really run these water types because like Rillaboom always was like threatening them, lurking. So basically, with Rillaboom gone, the water types got freed up. I did also include Rain as a list, but there's a reason why I think Rain can be good. So basically, there's Politoed, Ludicolo, Pelipper, Kingdra, Mantine, and Dreadnought. And I think those Pokemon can have some potential, but the overall, when I was looking at it, I thought, I'm not sure about Rain anymore, because the fact is, I think because of the new other bulky water types that pretty much give Rain a really hard time for its money, I think it's going to be actually really hard. Like, I think we're going to see a few Rain teams early on, and then I think they're going to dwindle when we see like the counterplay. For instance, I think Primarina is really solid in general. It's a really bulky Pokemon. It shuts down Kingdra Rain 100% because I think Kingdra is really good. It's one of the few fairy types, of course, in the game that's really offensive, and with Togekiss gone, it's a fantastic Pokemon. Just being able to, of course, like Life Orb, Mystic Water, Assault Vest. It has Citrus Berry, Rindle Berry sometimes to set. It doesn't have to run Rindle anymore probably, which is nice. And you know, just being able to go for like really powerful max geysers. Like this thing, deceptively, 126 isn't like the highest special attack stat in the game, but this Pokemon just hits really hard. And yeah, with no more Rillaboom, it's going to be a Pokemon that's just going to be coming back, I think, even stronger. No Rillaboom or Venusaur Sun that has to worry about it. This Pokemon can just do a ton of damage. It's a lot more freed up, and it's going to be helpful, especially with like other Pokemon that might be rising, especially like Pokemon like Urshifu. I think having a fairy type is really nice in general, and I think Primarina is definitely going to be like one of the biggest threats in the upcoming series, just because, again, it's really hard. And again, Rillaboom and Venusaur were main answers to Primarina. There are like maybe Ferrothorn and Amoonguss. Amoonguss not really, because it can drop to potential Hailstorm, as well as like Starfall gets set up. So like Amoonguss can maybe redirect attacks, but it can't really threaten the Primarina. Again, having high special defense stat also really helps it. So yeah, like I think only maybe like an Assault Vest Ferrothorn can potentially like take Primarina's attacks super well, because otherwise it's going to be quite strong. And another reason is why I included Azumarill here, because Azumarill, I think, also kind of like similar to Primarina, of course, with the same typing, Fairy and Water. I think Azumarill can actually come back stronger than ever. Although I think Ferrothorn and Amoonguss will probably rise up. I think Azumarill definitely has a lot more potential than it did previously. Again, not having to deal with Rillaboom is super big, as well as like Venusaur, again, has pretty good options on the physical side this time. Could run Belly Drum, and I think Belly Drum could actually be like more legit this time than it was previously, just because like Rillaboom was a Pokemon that just gave Azumarill a hard time setting up. I think actually like Azumarill gets a lot better, especially since I don't think Belly Drum might be his best set. Because I think Amoonguss will still be common. Although I think Assault Vest, Life Orb on Azumarill can even like do a lot of work. This Pokemon does a lot of damage with its huge power ability. And yeah, I do think Azumarill can have a shot with Primarina. I think bulky water types as well. Rotom Wash going to be really good. Rotom Wash kind of fell off because Rillaboom was just like everywhere basically. And if it wasn't Rillaboom, it was usually Amoonguss. This Pokemon really struggled because of it. But now since Rillaboom and Venusaur are gone too, really good bulky water. Bulky water was just really good, I think, in the format overall before like Venusaur and Rillaboom came back, or with the Grassy Surge. But now that both of those Pokemon are gone, Rotom Wash was a really strong Pokemon in the previous series before those Pokemon were allowed. And I think it's just coming back. I don't see a reason not to. Really good typing. Nasty Plot's a really good set. It could run support, but I think Rotom Wash just with the Nasty Plot set, which was probably the most common with Citrus Berry, just able to do a lot. It can help against Primarina a bit depending on like Dynamaxing. When they Dynamax, of course Primarina can run Overgrow, but like Rotom being able to Dynamax, live like a Starfall, be able to go for a Lightning to get damage on Primarina, it's just pretty good Pokemon overall. It just like can do a lot of work. And again, it's only weak to Mold Breaker stuff, which is like Excadrill, which is gone, and then the grass types, which is Rillaboom and Venusaur. Of course, it does have to watch out for Amoonguss, which is a new inclusion, which was in the previous series, but, or you know, pre-series 5 Isle of Armor. But overall, I think Rotom is going to have a very healthy place, as it can just, you know, it's pretty bulky, pretty versatile, has a lot of options. And yeah, I welcome Rotom. Lapras is another Pokemon that I think it's gonna be quite tricky to deal with. Lapras kind of was falling down in usage. Cinderace was pretty common. Lapras was like a Pokemon that just like was very common Series 3, kind of common Series 4, and then just like was falling off Series 5 because Rillaboom was a Pokemon that again threatened Lapras before it could get the Roarville up with like Grassy Glide. But overall, I think Lapras even better than 4 now. Because Togekiss is gone, you don't have to run Shell Armor. Shell Armor was the most common ability on Lapras, and that's because Critical Hit Togekiss was just such an oppressive Pokemon that Shell Armor was just like better overall. But now I don't think you need Shell Armor as much unless you're really worried about critical hits. I think it's a fair argument, but you can run Hydration, which I think could actually be better because it prevents Lapras from taking statuses and would always like wake it up at the end of the turn, which I think is really nice. Depending on like, you know, maybe dealing with like Thunderwave, Grimmsnarl, Spores from Amoonguss, for instance, if you don't run Max Lightning. I think it's a pretty legit set. There's a lot of different sets you can run on Lapras, like Clay or Weakness Policy are probably the two main standouts. Life Orb as well definitely could be a thing. I could definitely see like offensive cores with like Tailwind, Talonflame with like Lapras, which was already common in the beginning with like Porygon Z stuff. I think it definitely could be a thing, and I think it definitely is going to rise. So, and Aurora Veil is just so good, of course. Aurora Veil being so good, especially with like the main Pokemon that just gave Lapras trouble banned. So I think Lapras is definitely coming back. Could run like, again, the Light Clay set with Perish Song end game. It could go on the offensive route with Life Orb, or Weakness Policy with like Comfey to activate the policy. There's just so many things that I think Lapras has going for it right now. And yeah, I think especially like losing again those Pokemon that counter it specifically, it's going to be Rillaboom, Venusaur, the bulky water types just going to strive. And I think these 4 are probably the best water types that probably get benefited from no Rillaboom or Venusaur. Amoonguss, I think, definitely going to rise up. Amoonguss was definitely hard, especially with Togekiss and Cinderace being very effective Pokemon. And I think Amoonguss definitely going to rise back up, especially since like there aren't as many good grass types in the format. Venusaur and Rillaboom were by far the best grass types in BGC 2020 when they were released. So yeah, definitely Amoonguss definitely going to be coming back. And yeah, I think it definitely gets a change. You're definitely going to see probably less Cobra Berry because the Max Airstream users were mainly Togekiss and Dragapo. That were probably common calcs for Amoonguss, as well as like Cinderace. So overall, I think Amoonguss doesn't have to run Cobra Berry anymore, so it can actually run more different sets. We could see the Focus Sash set. We could see maybe some interesting other sets, maybe like Akka. We could see like tech Amoonguss items. There are like quite a bit you could probably run with Amoonguss. And yeah, I don't think Amoonguss is that bad with no redirection from Togekiss. Amoonguss is probably one of the best redirector Pokemon, especially since Entity and Togekiss are actually gone. So yeah, being able to redirect those attacks with like Rage Powder and help set up, I think is really solid. So yeah, Spore is also really good, of course, in the Dynamax format, and overall I do think Amoonguss does have a place, and it's definitely going to rise in usage. Next we got Rotom Heat, and I think Rotom Heat and Arcanine are going to be the main two fire type Pokemon, and I think Rotom Heat's actually going to be pretty decent overall as a starter, because if I don't know, if Pseudo Sun comes out, and I'm talking about Pseudo as in there's no Torkoal Venusaur, but there could still be Charizard, still a Pokemon in the format. Vileplume and Lilligant are still Pokemon in the format. I almost forgot what that Pokemon was called. Yeah, I think Rotom Heat could still definitely be a Pokemon for consideration, especially since Rotom Heat's really good against Charizard teams for the most part. And yeah, it will be a Pokemon I think that can help, especially since like Pokemon like Tyranitar, Moldbreaker, Excadrill are no longer a thing. I think Rotom Heat can actually shine a little bit, even with like all the returns of the bulky water types. I think it still could have a place. Especially for teams again that I think are going to be with Charizard, and you know, having a fire type of course is really nice. And you could run so many different sets. Again, it's as versatile as Rotom Wash. Could run a Nasty Plot set, or it could just run like a support set, Screens, Wisp, Thunder Wave, Scarf. Has a lot of different set options, and I think Rotom Heat pretty good fire type overall, and I definitely think we could see some usage out of it in the upcoming series. Next Pokemon we got is Hydreigon. Now Hydreigon is an interesting Pokemon. So of course we didn't really see Hydreigon as much because the two Pokemon that basically shut down Hydreigon was going to be Dragapult as well as Togekiss. And since both of them are gone, Hydreigon might actually have a place as one of the best dragon type, if not the best dragon type currently right now. Has pretty good stats. Hydreigon of course was always a good Pokemon, has pretty good overall stats. Its bulk is pretty solid. Speed not the best, but like 98 is still pretty fast, especially in this generation. 125 not the best again, but it does hurt quite a bit. It has really good coverage. Dark, Max Darkness, especially with like Dynamax Hydreigon, is really good, lowering the special defense for a follow-up. Max Dragon of course does get access to Flash Cannon, Fire Moves, Flamethrower, Fire Blast, Heat Wave. It gets options to Earth Power, and yeah, I think like Hydreigon definitely a good Pokemon right here, at least for the beginning. I'm not sure how good Hydreigon will be. Again, I do expect fairy types to still be a thing, whether it's going to be Primarina or Sylveon, so I'm not exactly too sure of how much Hydreigon can do, especially since I could see Kingdra coming back. I do see the Urshifu still being successful regardless. I think I could see fighting types rise back up because again, Togekiss and Dragapult are gone. So again, I'm not too sure of where I want to bring Hydreigon. Like stat wise, offensively, it could do really well, especially with the Life Orb and just like good coverage in general. Has pretty interesting options, I think. And yeah, I think it's gonna be good in the beginning, but I'm just not sure because I don't want to rate it too highly, just because I feel like if Primarina becomes too common with like Sylveon, for instance, like Hydreigon could still have the issues it always has, but it's definitely way better, especially since it's like one of the better dragon types right now, just because Dragapult's gone and doesn't have to worry about Life Orb Max Dragon from Dragapult dealing too much to it, or Togekiss with like Starfall, for instance, or Dazzling Gleam. I think Hydreigon definitely gets better. I'm not sure like how good it will be, because again, I think other fairy types will still hurt it regardless, but I do think it definitely got a lot better usage, and I'm excited to see actually if Hydreigon's able to make a comeback or not. All right, both Urshifus, the Rapid Style Strike as well as the Dark one. So I think actually both got a lot better, because the Pokemon that handled these, again, Dragapult, Togekiss, were basically the best checks I think to these two Pokemon, especially Togekiss. Togekiss was just like a Pokemon that just sponged up the attacks pretty much from these Pokemon. It threatened it with Airstream, Dazzling Gleam, and yeah, I think it was just like one of the best checks to Urshifu. Now that Togekiss is gone, like it's harder to switch into these Pokemon, especially them going to Protect. Of course, like Tyranitar and Excadrill didn't like the Unseen Fist, which allows both of these Pokemon with contact moves to like go through Protect. But overall, I think these Pokemon probably got better, especially since like again, the faster Pokemon pretty much got banned, and yeah, the main wall, which I still think is Togekiss, really just helps it. I think maybe like if Clefairy becomes more common of a Pokemon, these Pokemon can maybe struggle, but I just can't see them not being better, because of the fact that I think they are going to be able to like attack more often, because like very specific, like Togekiss fit on a lot of teams and could just be like put on a team and it will still be good. Clefairy's like, it's very situational for Clefairy, so I wouldn't expect there aren't going to be as many Clefairy. So I think like both Urshifus are just going to be solid. Yeah, I just can't see it, especially since like they have really good coverage for like, you know, just being able to hit hard, especially the Dark Urshifu, the single strike variant. I think Wicked Blow is just going to be really good as a wall breaker, especially like Pokemon like Dusclops, for instance. Can knock out potentially Gothitelle. There's a lot of Pokemon that I think these Pokemon can hit, and I think Urshifu definitely got better with no Togekiss especially, or no Dragapult, because Airstream was pretty problematic for them. Porygon Z, I think Porygon Z is definitely a Pokemon that definitely got better, because the Pokemon that basically were walling Porygon Z, or that were helping to check it, basically they took the boot. So Porygon Z is an interesting Pokemon because of the fact that with its adaptability, Life Orb, and Max Strike, it just did so much damage. It was actually insane with how much Hyper Beam did, because basically got to spam Hyper Beam 3 times with Max Strike, lowered her speed, so you can't really get a speed advantage. And yeah, I think Porygon Z got better because the main Pokemon that really liked to help with Porygon Z, Excadrill, that boosted up its special defense with Max Quake, Tyranitar, which was able to pretty much wall Porygon Z for the most part, and yeah, it just ended up taking attacks in the sun, as well as Dragapult, because like you could only max Darkness Dragapult, and yeah, you could have like a Toge, you could play mind games between the Max Strike as well as the Max Darkness on the Follow Me or not. So yeah, and also like Dragapult could Airstream before Porygon Z could get an attack off, and then a follow-up because Porygon Z's frail could just knock it out. So yeah, I think most of the Porygon Z troublesome Pokemon that Porygon Z had to deal with no longer in the format. So like Porygon Z, less switch-ins to it, can definitely be harder to deal with. So I'm interested to see where it goes, but I think Porygon Z will definitely be, again, a thing on hyper offensive teams, and you know, paired with Clefairy, paired with Talonflame for offense, I do think this Pokemon definitely going to be rising up. Dusclops. So Dusclops is the Trick Room setter that pretty much was the absolute best Trick Room setter probably in 2020 before Porygon came out. Then it kind of got divided between Porygon and Dusclops, although still a fantastic Pokemon. And with Porygon 2 gone, Dusclops is actually probably, again, the best Trick Room setter right now. Frisk is in a fantastic ability, allowing it to scout for items. Violet, of course, having to run that, but like Rillaboom not being a format of knockoff, I think is really nice. No Tyranitar to worry about like weakness policy proc into like Max Darkness or Lash Out to knock out Dusclops. I think that Dusclops could be even better as a Trick Room setter than before. Of course, it does have to watch out for Pokemon like Urshifu, Hydreigon becomes common, but doesn't have to deal with like Dragapult or like Tyranitar. So I think Dusclops pretty much got a win here. So of course, really great support abilities: Trick Room, Nightshade for consistent damage, Helping Hand, Pain Split, Bulldoze for weakness policies. Of course, you got Ally Switch, just a bunch of options, and I think Dusclops definitely going to be cemented as its best Trick Room setter. I don't think there's really much to say about Dusclops. I think it's going to be good regardless on any kind of Trick Room team, even if it's just a Trick Room team mode. We also got Arcanine. So Arcanine is going to be a Pokemon coming back, and yeah, I feel like it's just going to go back to where Arcanine, the most common Intimidate Fire type Pokemon, going to be pretty high in usage, because it's basically just going to be like Series 2 and Series 1 where there's no Incineroar. So don't see a reason why Arcanine isn't going to be a thing. Again, pretty decent stats overall, pretty fast, can hit pretty hard. Options for like Will support, Snarl, Safeguard, fire moves, could go Choice Band or Life Orb. It has quite a few capabilities. Assault Vest as well. Beat Up Justified is another set, but overall, I don't see a reason why Arcanine isn't going to be a common Pokemon and a staple. Fire type is still going to be obviously really solid, especially since I think Ferrothorn is going to be coming back in high usage. I think a fire type is going to be really crucial, and I think having Arcanine being able to handle Ferrothorn is going to be pretty key. And yeah, I don't think there's much to say about Arcanine. We kind of know what this Pokemon pretty much does already, I would assume so. And yeah, this is going to be a really solid Intimidate user, really good support Pokemon, could be good offensively, and yeah, just really there for like it can help against the Mungus and Ferrothorn, which is going to be really nice. Charizard. Tyranitar's gone, so that's a little bit of a concern. Gigalith is an option, but yeah, especially with Charizard, it's going to be a lot harder. Granted, the best Sun users, Whimsicott, set up Sunny Day manually, as well as the Porygon, so Charizard probably having a bit harder time to set up the sun, but still really just does fantastic amounts of damage. Bulky waters are going to be annoying, but like Charizard does have the option to just nuke the bulky water types for the most part with like Life Orb, Solar Power, Max Move. And yeah, it's really hard to switch in Charizard. Even if it doesn't nuke it, it still does like a ton of damage regardless. Sea of Fire is going to be a bit annoying. Again, Tyranitar is no longer a thing. Excadrill can't even get the Sand Rush boost to hit this Charizard outspeed with like maybe a max Rockfall. So yeah, I think Charizard can be good. I don't know how good Sun will be. It can get partnered up with Sableye, I think, or Ninetales to set up the Sunny Day, which is definitely a potential option. Scorching Sand is a new tech that I got in this generation, which is not bad for it. And overall, I think Charizard can hit super hard. So I'll be interested to see if like Charizard will do well, because I'm not even too sure. I think it like has potential because of course, no Tyranitar I think is just absolutely huge. I think no Tyranitar is absolutely huge. Terrakion and Gigalith are definitely potential counters to Charizard, which can help, but I'm interested to see whether Charizard can make a comeback because it does have some of the best offensive potential of any Pokemon on the list that I'm showcasing. Talonflame, I think, priority Gale Wings, allowing Tailwind to basically go up first. Since Whimsicott's no longer gone, this is your best option, and it's definitely a Pokemon that I think is pretty common. I think with Tailwind, of course, with like Lapras is pretty common, with Taunt, Fire Move, maybe Dual Wing Beast or Brave Bird depending on the set. Safety Goggles or Sharpie for the item are the most common with like max attack, max speed, maybe some HP instead of attack. But overall, I think Talonflame probably going to be your staple Pokemon on hyper offensive teams now, especially like Porygon Z and Lapras. I think that's going to be the main thing that Talonflame is going to do, because it's pretty much now the only option to get Tailwind unless you're running Cottonee. But I think Cottonee actually doesn't even get Tailwind, so I'm pretty sure it's only Talonflame that gets the priority Tailwind now. So yeah, I think Talonflame definitely gets better, I think, overall. I mean, it's still using Talonflame, which is the thing. Again, base 81 attacks, that not my favorite. Its bulk is pretty sad. Its speed is the only redeeming factor, as well as the Gale Wings, and the support moves can run Will-O-Wisp, I guess. There isn't really much to say about Talonflame. Offensively, Talonflame is not capable, especially in the Dynamax format, so you're pretty much only using this Pokemon as a support mod with maybe like Quick Guard, Taunt, Tailwind, and then like you have coverage moves just to deal damage. But overall, yeah, I see this being the main staple of hyper offensive teams now that Whimsicott's gone. Conkeldurr, I think Conkeldurr comes back in a stronger suit because of the fact that there's no more Togekiss and Dragapo, which were kind of annoying Pokemon for Conkeldurr to deal with. And, of course, Tyranitar and Excadrill are banned, so like Conkeldurr might have lost that kind of handle, because Conkeldurr was a Pokemon that could just sponge up attacks and like Drain Punch KO for recovery. But overall, I think Conkeldurr is going to be pretty nice, especially I think Assault Vest could come back. Life Orb with Iron Fist can come out. Flame Orb Guts is also a good set. Like, this Pokemon just hits super hard in my opinion. I think Fighting type might be a bit more useful in this series more than the others, again, specifically because no Togekiss is really huge, I think. So no more Follow Me redirection. It does have to worry about a Moongus though, although it can hit it with like a pretty powerful Ice Punch if it wants to run Ice Punch. I think Conkeldurr definitely has some good potential in this series, just because, like, again, Lapras can be a thing, or it could be partnered with Lapras. You could definitely see Conkeldurr chosen as the fighting type over Urshifu, depending on the team and the composition. So I think Conkeldurr comes back in stronger suit. Don't know really what else to say. It's just a really solid fighting type, has access to reliable recovery with Drain Punch, and it's pretty hard. Base 140 attack is really nice. Can be bulky under Aurora Veil or Assault Vest, makes it really able to tank attacks and just dish out a ton of damage. Overall, really solid Pokemon, and yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Conkeldurr doing pretty well again. Goodra. Now, Goodra pretty much was a Pokemon that absolutely hated a few Pokemon. Tyranitar I didn't exactly like, because Dynamax Tyranitar was able to sponge up attacks. If you tried to hit it super effectively, Weakness Policy could get activated, and then you just get one shot back. There was the Dragapo, which was very, very common, because you're going to slow down Dragapo unless you burned it. But like, Dragapo pretty much got a Max Dragon. Life Orb just KOs Dynamax Goodra. Pretty much the end of Goodra. So now that Dragapo is gone, and even Togekiss, which is a Pokemon that could just redirect a lot of Goodra's attacks, other than like Max Lightning or Hailstorm, because it would always follow me the other attacks and would be able to sponge it up, because Togekiss just being a bulky Pokemon. But now Goodra probably gets a bit more help, because like the main hard hitting physical attackers aren't allowed in the format anymore. Cinderace isn't allowed, of course. No more Tyranitar, no more Dragapo. So Goodra could actually like get some more usage or utility out of it because of the fact it might be a more threatening Pokemon now, especially since, of course, Comfey with the Draining Kiss Weakness Policy activation, definitely a potential. Of course, it did lose the niche to where like handling Sun is absolutely necessary because of the fact there is no Torkoal, but it still does a pretty good amount. It's able to take on Charizard decently well, I guess, as well as any other like, you know, Vileplume or Lilligant potentially. So Sap Sipper might still be worth it, I think. I don't think Gooey is really that worth it. Hydration, I guess, but I don't think it's really not necessary and requires you to get a Hydro Pump off. So like overall, I think Goodra gets a bit better because basically the Pokemon that just threaten it basically are gone from the format. Terrakion. So Virizion, Kabala, and Terrakion, I guess I'll put in here. It's kind of weird because these Pokemon I think are only really good with beat up. Terrakion maybe can be good without beat up, but like the other two definitely rely on beat up to actually do anything in VGC. But the thing about Terrakion is I think Terrakion definitely could have something. Charizard and Lapras could be a bit annoying, so Rockfall could actually be a bit of a threat. We can still see beat up though, even though Dragapult and the Whimsicott are gone. There are still Pokemon that do get beat up. Of course, like Alolan Persian, I guess Feeble if you want to run Burden. There's Salazzle, for instance. There's quite a few Pokemon that have speed. Weavile and Sneasel. I think maybe even Sneasel is actually legitimate because of the fact it gets inner focus and is so fast in Terrakion. So yeah, I mean, they're all potential options. So I think that Terrakion could be a thing. I don't know if it gets better. I think the reason I put Terrakion is because like Grassy Glide Rillaboom was a Pokemon that just annoyed the heck out of Terrakion. But since there's no Grassy Glide Rillaboom, there's no Steel Spike Cinderace or Knuckle Cinderace that's threatening Terrakion. I think it definitely has a bit of potential, but of course it did lose the option for both a Tailwind and beat up user in Whimsicott, which, you know, makes me question whether Terrakion is going to be good or not. I think it definitely got some benefits though. Of course, again, Cinderace, Rillaboom banned. Excadrill also being banned is nice because it doesn't have to worry about like Excadrill outspeeding with Sandrush. So yeah, I definitely do think that Terrakion might be better now in this series, but we'll wait and see. Gigalith, pretty much you're not going to run Sand, but Gigalith is a good rock type. Again, decent against Charizard. Actually pretty decent stats overall. Pretty low speed and doesn't have to worry about like playing the Torkoal speed war with the weather. And yeah, just can do a ton of damage. It does have really good attack and defense stats, and overall pretty good. It has options to max Quake, max Steel Spike to boost up its own defenses even further, max Knuckle with like superpower being able to boost its attack. Weakness policy pretty common. I wouldn't be surprised to see Gigalith be used over Tyranitar on certain teams because you might not need the Dark type anymore because of the fact that, again, Dragapult was the main ghost Pokemon that was just like giving teams a lot of trouble with resistances. So I think Gigalith could definitely still be a good Pokemon, especially on like Trick Room teams that like the Bulldoze weakness policy strat. And I do think Gigalith isn't a bad Pokemon as a sweeper too. Rhyperior. So I think Rhyperior, again, a Pokemon that we didn't see as much just because like Rillaboom was super impressive. Venusaur was pretty common. Grassy Glide especially just like really hurt Rhyperior and its sweeping potential in hard Trick Room. But yeah, since Rillaboom is gone, I think Rhyperior does have a shot. Of course, it does have to worry about the new bulky water types that are going to rise up, but I think it definitely still has the potential because of the fact that weakness policy with Bulldoze is still going to be a thing. And I think Rhyperior could definitely rise in usage, especially since this Pokemon, of course, sets up the Sand, sets up max Quakes to boost the special defense, could have max Lightning for the dealing with those bulky water types like Milotic, for instance. Yeah, I think Rhyperior definitely has potential. I definitely think it's going to be better than it was in Series 5, where we just barely didn't see it at all. So I do think Rhyperior will have a better usage in Series 6. By how much? Not really too sure. But of course, Solid Rock, great stats overall, really good sweeper in Trick Room, especially with weakness policy. It's going to be interesting to see how Rhyperior will do. The fossils, I think, definitely get better. Togekiss no longer redirecting attacks. Dragapult gone, the most oppressive dragon for these Pokemon. Really crucial because this allows these Pokemon to go in and not really worried about getting KO'd by a Life Form Max Dragon. And yeah, I think Dracozolt and Dracofish both benefit, especially I think being able Dracozolt just to yeah, it's gonna be really hard to swap in this Pokemon. I think, especially no more Max Dragon. There's no more Excadrill too, so you can't like Steel Spike or like dressing it with Quake. Tyranitar was a Pokemon that could take it decently well, but not the best. Venusaur with Max Quake as well. It was just like, and of course like Torkoal had at least could take one hit usually, as long as it's not Max Quake. But overall, I feel like Dracozolt can definitely shine in this format because especially since I do predict more bulky waters to come. I think Dracozolt can be a fantastic Pokemon, even if it's a Hustle, Boltbeak. You might have to take a chance. I think Dracozolt has a lot of potential in the upcoming series, especially like Dracovish too, because of the fact that again, no Togekiss is absolutely huge, no Venusaur, no Rillaboom. Yeah, I mean, it's just like a Pokemon. It's harder to stop now because like the best counters to Dracovish basically went away. Of course, like I think because of like, you know, the bans, I think actually Gastron's gonna come out, and if Gastron becomes more popular than I think, Dracovish might not be as threatening. Same with Dracozolt, but Dracozolt can hit it harder with like the Max Dragon stuff. Dracovish not really can Dynamax because it's not really good as a Dynamax Pokemon. Base 90 attack isn't really that good, but Vicious Rends being the main concept. But overall, I think Dracovish definitely has a place. I think because it's pretty common on the Lapras hyper offensive teams with like Tailwind, setting up the Geyser as well as the Geyser for Rain, as well as setting up the Resonance, so Dracovish can come in and sweep. Definitely has potential. And yeah, Amoonguss could still be a thing though, although they have to be a little bit worried about Psychic Fangs potentially because Psychic Fangs will still hurt them. But overall, I do think these Pokemon definitely get better with the current bans that are in place. Ferrothorn, I think Ferrothorn comes back easily. I think it's either the best grass type or the second best grass type. Again, it's between Ferrothorn and Amoonguss. I want to say Ferrothorn because it just threatens the bulky waters, unlike Amoonguss, which, you know, kind of plays passive against them, and the best that Amoonguss can really do is like Energy Ball, Sludge Bomb, or Giga Drain. It really doesn't do much. Ferrothorn can actually hit pretty hard because even though it has not the best attack stat, Power Whip does a lot of damage, Overgrow does a good amount. Pretty good bulk overall. This is a Pokemon that can actually handle Primarina if you give it an Assault Vest with Dynamax. Has pretty good options. Steel Spike with Gyro Ball, which hits pretty hard. You have Knockoff for the option to just get rid of items. You could run quite a few different options. Body Press especially is another good set, especially if you're going to just keep Steel Spiking up. So I think Ferrothorn is going to be a really good grass type. I think you're going to need Ferrothorn in some teams just to handle Primarina. But overall, also appreciates like Pokemon like Torkoal and Cinderace being gone, because those were pretty oppressive, as well as Incineroar to handle the Ferrothorn. So I think Ferrothorn can rise. Either Assault Vest, I think. I could see standard Leech Seed, but I don't think it's good. I think the main ones that are going to shine are going to be Assault Vest, and then the Iron Defense Body Press set, which I think gets more common because I think it actually gets better because, like, again, it doesn't have to worry about Torkoal or Cinderace. It only has to worry about, like, maybe Arcanine, Rotom Heat and stuff. I definitely could see Iron Defense Ferrothorn coming back high in usage. So, yeah, definitely something to have to watch out for, because if this thing sets up an Iron Defense and you don't have a special fire move, you could be in a lot of trouble to deal with Ferrothorn. Sylveon, I think Sylveon is the backup Togekiss basically, and if you don't want to run Primarina, if you're already a water type, I think Sylveon's completely fine. It's an interesting Pokemon. It was used nichely in like Series 2. It did win a regional, and yeah, it actually did win a regional and the only international for 2020. Those were Series 2 events, but I mean, still pretty good Pokemon. You don't really see this Pokemon again because of like Excadrill, which is gone, which is nice for it because it does have to deal with Steel Spike. Togekiss was just a better fairy type overall because it was a ground immunity, which was nice. Follow Me had probably better stats overall. But Sylveon having really high special defense, good special attack, spread Hyper Voice, Pixelate boosted is really nice. And or not even specs, you could just run Pixie Plate. It also gets the options to Yawn, of course, like Togekiss did. Overall, probably wasn't as good as Togekiss. It does get Mystical Fire, but really, yeah, it's just like an interesting Pokemon. It's probably just like a backup. It does get Calm Mind, although I don't think Calm Mind's that amazing on Sylveon, but it's definitely an option. You can run Quick Attack for like maybe some priority, or like maybe activating a policy or two. But overall, I think Sylveon can be a good replacement for Togekiss. Fairy type again is still really good, and I'm not exactly too sure. It's also pretty bulky on the special side, which is nice. Can hit you know, decently hard with Hyper Voice, especially since Pixelate did get nerfed in the Gen 7. So I think overall Togekiss can be a good replacement for Togekiss or Clefairy potentially. So Clefairy with the Follow Me is something that I think if you need a redirector, you're not going to go Togetic. I think you go Clefairy always, because I think Clefairy gets better redirection. If you want that fairy type, you could go Amoonguss otherwise. But overall, Friend Guard I think makes it good. We all know what Clefairy does. A Violet for the item. Usually you just Follow Me between like a bunch of different moves. It gets Helping Hand, gets Heal Pulse, gets Life Dew, Aromatherapy is kind of nice. Icy Wind for support. It gets actually a lot of good moves overall. And you know, Sing is there potentially because it can like punish like slow Pokemon that aren't paying attention to Clef to actually respect it. I think like Clefairy is probably the replacement for the Follow Me redirector of Togekiss if you're not running Amoonguss. If you need like Follow Me, absolutely, I think you go Clefairy with Friend Guard. I think it helps with Porygon Z and some other setup teams, and I think Clefairy is still really good. Can help with like Charizard, for instance. Charizard Clefairy has been a good combination actually. So overall, yeah, I think Clefairy definitely going to rise a little bit more just because Togekiss is going to be gone and take the niche of a fairy type Pokemon that has Follow Me support. All right, so I'm not trying to make this video 3 hours, so I'm just going to go over the last list of what I think. There are definitely probably more Pokemon that I think, but these are the ones that stood out to me in general out of the entire list that I had. Like the Pokemon I've listed in this video are basically the ones that stand out to me. So Como, now I think Como is actually interesting. So really impressed by Togekiss as well as Dragapult, and I think since both of those are gone in the next series, I think Como actually does have potential. I think it's not as good as it was previously, absolutely not. Like Clanger Soul Blaze in Generation 7 was really solid for it. In Generation 8 it got Clanger Soul, not as good. I think Como could actually be a very decent threat. It's actually got pretty good stats. If we don't see as many fairy types, I think Como could actually rise because it does deal with a lot of Pokemon and can have good sweeping potential. Togekiss was the main issue for Como. Primarina and the Sylveon are still going to be annoying, but I think they're definitely more manageable than like Togekiss and Dragapult, which were just like, again, Pokemon that outspec Como, really just obnoxious to handle. I think Como definitely can have a potential role, and yeah, it's a nice fighting type, helps, can deal decent damage to Lapras. It really just depends, but overall I do think that Como has some place. I think I could see it rise a little bit. I'm not sure about how much. I think it just depends on, again, how many fairy types are actually going to be used, but overall, especially Primarina and Sylveon, but I think Como does have like a much higher chance of succeeding than it did in previous series. Braviary, I think if you need a flying type to replace Togekiss, basically you're going to go with Braviary, probably one of the best max airstream users. Defiant for the ability to basically, like, you know, punish intimidate users or anything that wants to like lower your stats in general from a max move. Pretty good attack stat, pretty good coverage in general with flying, fighting, gets access to rock, gets access to normal. And overall, I think just like a really solid Pokemon that just hits really hard. So if you're looking for a flying type that just does a lot of damage that isn't Togekiss, I think Braviary is not a bad option, just because it does have that just that option to shut down, again, intimidates or punish them, do a ton of damage with max airstream. Even has Tailwind support, so if you need speed control, Braviary is not a bad option. Diggersby, not many ground types in the format, especially with Excadrill gone, so Diggersby is probably your next best ground type that's not Excadrill. Does get access to huge power, which allows it to double its attack stat, so even though it's only got a base 56 attack stat, huge power with improper investment allows it to like hit a pretty good amount. Has some pretty interesting tools with max strike, max quake, of course, with Dynamax, and then like, you know, gets access to Sword Stance, Bounce, Thunder Punch, Fire Punch. It gets quite a few good actually like coverage moves. I don't think Diggersby is that bad either, so yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. If a team needs a ground type, I don't see Diggersby not being that bad on a team to put on, especially with Excadrill gone. So I'd obviously see Diggersby being used more in this common series, just because like there aren't that many ground type options in this format. So next we got Colossal, and Colossal is a Pokemon that I definitely can see succeed. It's just going to be tough for it. So it did lose Tyranitar, which was kind of a nuisance to deal with because Tyranitar could always take a Colossal hit pretty well. You always had to play around policy. There was Excadrill, which of course could threaten Colossal if you're running Surf and not Aqua Jet. There was Venusaur that could also do the same thing, that could be oppressive. Togekiss could be annoying if you're running the Aqua Jet set because it was hard to redirect. And yeah, overall, of course, there was like Cinderace with High Jump Kick, Rillaboom with the Max Quake option. I mean, there were a few Pokemon, but overall, I think like Rillaboom, of course, can deny like Primarina, for instance, for setting up Colossal's Steam Engine because it outsped, got the Grassy Glide off. But overall, I think Colossal can still succeed. It did lose Rillaboom though as a partner. Rillaboom was a really good partner for Colossal because just dealing with the water types was a lot easier with Rillaboom. So no, Rillaboom kind of hurts Colossal, but I don't think it's that bad. It can set up the Sun to take one attack from a water type Pokemon, and overall, I think it has good sweeping potential. I think it just really comes down to what becomes the common staple, but I could see Colossal doing work. I could see it dropping. I think it really just depends because I don't think it's a bad Pokemon in this form or in the upcoming series. And yeah, it definitely still, again, has the same tactics as it always does. Weakness policy, bunch of attacks. It just lost a few partners. Dragapo losing and Rillaboom losing is kind of bad for it, but overall I don't think it's like terrible or the end of the world. And again, it's really going to come down to, because I think it does do work against a lot of the common Pokemon, especially the ones I even listed in this list currently. So I think I can see Colossal do work, but we'll have to wait and see. Durant, I think Durant is coming back. Dragapo with Airstream, I always have to watch out for a fire move. Venusaur, Torkoal were always really annoying with sleep powder stuff. Togekiss, super impressive because you had to play around like fire moves. Airstream, Cinderace too, because Cinderace was a really big threatening one. Incineroar, of course, with the Intimidate. So yeah, like overall, I think Durant comes back and can do really well. Maybe on rain teams, I'm not exactly too sure. It's really hard, of course. Life Orb Hustle, just absolutely incredible. Just like damage up was absolutely terrifying. So does get good coverage. Ice or not ice, Steel Bug is really good, of course, with stabs, can help it defensively. Max Quake option. Rockfall could have Max Lightning with Thunder Fang. It doesn't have the worst options out there. It can have Max Darkness, although not really. Maybe Max Ghost, but overall not a bad Pokemon. Does a lot of damage, and I think the Pokemon that just scared away pretty much are gone. Again, Cinderace, Dragapult, Torkoal, and Togekiss being gone, I think it's huge for Durant. So I could definitely see Durant making a comeback potentially, even with maybe Arcanine coming back in usage. And finally, the last Pokemon, I did think Vileplume is potentially viable with like Lilligant, although I'm not sure, like, again, they're super niche, so I'm not exactly sure how much we're gonna see them, but I could definitely see a niche Pokemon in Roserade coming back. Roserade was a Pokemon that like often competed against Venusaur, even in like Series 3, and yeah, in Series 2 and Series 1 there was some usage of Roserade. Of course, Sleep Powder, you know, grass type that hits pretty hard with like Leaf Storm, pretty fast overall. 90 isn't too bad. Natural Cure is a cool ability, probably will run like Focus Sash, maybe a Life Orb, Leaf Storm, Sleep Powder, Sludge Bomb, and then maybe like Protect is the last one. But overall, not a bad Pokemon. It's able to basically, you know, just be like a fast Sleep Powder mon, which again, Sleep is pretty strong in this format, so wouldn't be surprised to see Roserade do work. But yeah, I could definitely see it rise up because no Venusaur, maybe on non-Sun teams too. So yeah, I could definitely see it on the Lapras teams too, especially like with like Talonflame and all that, but we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, that's my entire breakdown of my early predictions for Series 6. So let me know what you think about it down below. If I missed anything, feel free to leave a response down below. Feel free to let me know what you think are the biggest threats. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Let me know in the comments down below. Let's have a fun discussion. But otherwise, yeah, if you want to join an awesome community, there is my Discord. If you want to interact and talk more about Series 6, you can go check it out down below. Again, I'm not exactly sure if this is going to be the official VGC rule set. Of course, double stadium ladder and VGC have been different at times, and definitely could be the case. But if this is the case and they are going to try to experiment with something new, I'm interested to see. Overall, I don't think it's too bad to experiment, especially since this is kind of like a low point for VGC interest wise. There isn't really much going on right now, so you know, just a nice change. So you know, I'm kind of okay with it. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. But thank you all for watching. If you made it this far, have a great day, people, and until we bow again, I'll catch y'all later.